Hello and welcome to Hot Topic. I'm Hugh Richards. This week I'm joined by Councillor Philip Jackson, leader of the Conservative group on North East Lincolnshire Council. Local elections in the spring left his party the second largest group with 10 seats to Labour's 21, UKIP's 8 and the Liberal Democrats 3, making him the leader of the opposition to Chris Shaw's minority administration. Philip Jackson, welcome. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you for inviting me.
Were you pleased with the results of the local elections in spring?
Well, I would have liked to have seen the Conservatives win more seats. I felt that we fought a very good campaign, and it was unfortunate that we had UKIP intervention in a number of wards which prevented us from taking seats, which I think ordinarily we would have won.
And was that it? Was it UKIP what lost it for you, as it were?
Well, I think there is a real danger with UKIP that they will split the right of centre vote, and I think we have demonstrated in a number of wards across North East Lincolnshire that we would have held or taken seats had it not been for UKIP votes.
How does that bode for wider elections? Grimsby, if it has UKIP plus the Conservatives, might have a right-wing or a right-of-centre majority in this area, in this unitary authority. Does that mean that it could be a seat taken by either UKIP or the Conservatives in the general election?
Well, I certainly think the Grimsby seat is wide open in the general election next year. It's very difficult to predict what will happen. There's a lot of water to go under the bridge before the general election next year. Things can change very quickly in politics, and the political environment seems to be very changeable at the moment. So I think it's very difficult to predict what might happen.
Well, we'll come back to the internal politics of the Conservative Party nationally and locally in a moment, but a few local issues within North East Lincolnshire that have been very newsworthy recently. The tower blocks on East March, Shoreline Housing Association wants to bring them down. There seems to be a lot of protest, very political protest, to keep them standing. Where do you stand?
Well, I was involved in the Regeneration and Housing Scrutiny Panel when Shoreline came to start their public consultation back in May, and it was made very clear then that Shoreline are currently having problems letting those flats. There's quite a large percentage of them empty. There's a lot of money needs to be spent on them, and Shoreline's calculations indicated that they would have to spend far more money on them over the next few years than they would possibly be able to recover in rent in future years, and in that respect, they don't consider that they are a viable option going forward. At the same time, they have a lot of other empty properties in other parts of the town, which they'd like to see occupied, and so that's why they've decided to go out to full public consultation about the possibility of demolishing those flats. I mean, my view is that I think we have to acknowledge the economics behind them. At the same time, we obviously have to be concerned about those people who see them as their home and don't want to lose them.
Are you satisfied that those 700 people have other homes to go to?
Well, the Shoreline is in the middle of talking to those people, making them alternative offers. They're not intending to demolish the flats immediately. This is something that's going to happen over a number of years. And of course, potentially, it does offer a major regeneration opportunity for that particular part of Freeman Street. We know that Freeman Street in general needs a lot of work doing on it. It's probably one of the most run-down areas of North East Lincolnshire.
It has a unique charm, doesn't it?
It does indeed, yes. But at the same time, I think we have to recognise that, particularly at the northern end of Freeman Street, there is major regeneration required. It has been a problem that the council has been trying to address for many years now, and this could be part of a new opportunity for Freeman Street.
The movement of resistance to taking down the tower blocks is. We've spent the last 20 or 30 years regretting the 1960s and 50s building of tower blocks and the destruction of those communities that existed before in the terrace streets. Now are we becoming sentimental about vertical living and tower block living? Is that not a certain irony in architectural thinking and town planning thinking?
Well, yes, I think that is the case, and of course Shoreline would also cite the survey that they undertook of residents, which showed that over 50% of them were in favour of leaving the tower blocks and having them demolished. So I think there's still a public debate to be had on the tower blocks, but I think we can't just turn our backs on the facts that have been very clearly elucidated by Shoreline. All the information is out in the public arena. The public consultation started back in May, and I just find it rather surprising that that politicians are now starting to make objections to the demolition of them, when the whole thing has been in the public arena for a number of months now.
But nobody's going to say, it's too late to object now because you've gone over the time limit. If the objection is there, then the bureaucratic matter of when was the consultation period that's not going to negate the possibility of future consultation.
No, absolutely, and Shoreline always made it very clear, I think, if you look at their documents, that they wanted a full public debate on this. You
mentioned regeneration north, the north end of Freeman Street. There is a certain amount of regeneration going on around Grimsby, the bus station, Bethlehem Street, Freeman Street, and it tends to take the form of the famous checkered paving stones.
Yes.
Now that in itself is not a regeneration, that's a cosmetic change at best, and some would say that it's not a particularly tasteful cosmetic change. Has that been a wise use of money?
Well, of course, a large part of the money that was spent on the Top Town regeneration was in fact a government grant, Conservative government grant, that was given specifically for that regeneration. So it couldn't have been spent in other parts of the borough. Having said that, although I'm broadly in favour of the work that's been done in the town centre, that particular design of block paving would not have been my personal choice.
Why does the Conservative, the central government, this is who granted that money, so the government of the Conservative and Liberal coalition, why would they be so concerned to give taxpayers' money to repave Grimsby?
Well, of course, there was a lot of other work done apart from repaving the town centre. I mean, there are a new bus interchange, a change in the layout of the town centre, and the opportunity to improve the cycling offer, for example. So there was quite a lot of other things attached to the bid. It wasn't just merely around the repaving of a town centre. Having said that, I think it has caused a lot of controversy. I don't think the design of the paving is ideal, and it certainly wouldn't have been my choice.
Well, apart from the aesthetic of the thing, but you're broadly in agreement with the current Labour administration about how that money should be spent and how that regeneration should be operated.
Well, it was very clear that the government grant was given specific for that project. It was a bid that was put in for that particular regeneration of that part of the centre of Grimsby. Could not have been spent elsewhere. As I say, there's a debate to be had about the design of the regeneration, and in particular the block paving. I don't support the design of the block paving myself. It wouldn't have been my choice, but I am in favour of where we can get government money into regenerate parts of North East Lincolnshire. We should be making maximum use of that.
Another aspect of the infrastructure of this authority is how fast you can move through it. There's a boulevard with dual carriageway, no pavements, no shops and walls either side of it, at which there's been a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit for the last little while on Peaks Parkway. I take it, like everybody else here, you know somebody who's been stopped and fined by those cameras.
I know several people who've been stopped and fined by those cameras, yes.
Are you in favour of the change, the raising of the speed limit?
I am. I was one who actually originally proposed the increase in the speed limit to 40 miles per hour last December at a full council meeting, and it's taken us until October this year to get to the situation where we're actually going to implement that. I mean, as far as decision making in local government is concerned, it has to be a case study in procrastination.
Well, who has been delaying it? What is the procrastination? In whose interest is it to have the speed limit at a snail's pace along that great big wide boulevard?
Well, as you rightly say, of course, it was a road which was designed to ensure rapid entry and exit to the Grimsby town centre, to enable traffic to move around, to try and help to promote the local economy, and you know, we should have been moving a long time ago to a 40-mile-per-hour speed limit on that section of road.
What's been the delay? Because
well,
the people of North East Lincolnshire have been complaining and whinging about this, or bleating, as Chris Shaw would say, about this for a long time now. So why has it taken so long?
Well, it was referred from full council last December to a cabinet working group, and then to public consultation, and then back to cabinet again, and then they referred it back to full council. I mean, it was very clear back in March that it was a settled view of full council that we should adopt the 40-mile-an-hour speed limit, and it should have been done then. I mean, the Labour group did do a U-turn on it. They objected to it back in December, but are now fully in support of the 40-mile-an-hour speed limit. So we could have saved all this procrastination and bureaucracy and implemented it last December.
If there had been a Conservative majority on the council by now, then what other infrastructure changes would you have preferred to see, or would you be initiating now that aren't going ahead under the present administration?
Well, I think we need to have a look at our road network in general. I think for a local authority the size of North East Lincolnshire, it is quite difficult to get around the town in a car. There does seem to be a lot of traffic lights.
It's not very well coordinated. Question of getting around the town, it's getting into the town as well. It's the great trunk roads that come in and out of North East Lincolnshire. There's that horrible sort of corrugated cardboard motorway that comes along the south coast of the Humber. I mean, what further investments are necessary for that?
Well, yes, it would be good to see that that resurfaced. That's not, unfortunately, in the gift of North East Lincolnshire, so that belongs to the Highways Agency. But I think it would be good if the government was looking to invest some money to resurface that stretch of the A180. That would be a great benefit, I think. Yes.
But it's not just a matter of convenience for people who live here. It's the whole economy depends on that good transport structure.
Indeed, and of course, talking about infrastructure investment, the government is investing £160 million, so £120 million in the upgrading the A160 into Immingham Docks, which is going to be a great benefit to the local economy.
We'll move on to that infrastructure, that investment in the future of the economy here after the break. Thank you very much. Must stop you there. They'll have to have a little break here. Please join us after that. See you in a moment. Welcome back to Hot Topic. I'm talking to Councillor Philip Jackson, leader of the Conservative group on North East Lincolnshire Council. Councillor Jackson, thanks for coming. We were just talking about investment in infrastructure in North East Lincolnshire, and how important that is, transport infrastructure amongst other things. The great future of this area is the renewable energy sector. What can the council do to encourage investment, money, profit, employment in this territory? Yeah,
it's not just, of course, the renewable sector, it's logistics in general. The port sector is a very big employer and a growing employer for the area. And I mean, certainly we're seeing the government investing £120 million in upgrading the A160 into Immingham and Killingholme, which will help the area. They've also given a £4 million grant towards the new Immingham bypass, which will be a great help as well. And they're looking to upgrade the rail infrastructure into North East Lincolnshire. So these are all things which will help the area. But I mean, you're absolutely right. We do need to ensure that we cash in on the offshore wind farm industry, the renewables sector. And we need to make sure we gear up the local economy to be able to take advantage of that. That means making sure that we skill up local people to take advantage of those jobs. What we want is local people to get the jobs in that new area of industry and activity, rather than people necessarily coming in from outside.
Presumably on those issues you are absolutely in agreement with the current Labour administration.
Well, I'm not sure that it's just necessarily the Labour administration that's saying that. I think everybody in North East Lincolnshire...
It's not very controversial to say we want to fill the economy.
Is looking to see what we can do to improve the local economy and how we can ensure that local people have the necessary skills to take up those options.
Were you in power in North East Lincolnshire, what would you be doing differently?
Well, we'll be doing everything we possibly could to ensure that we were attracting maximum government grant into the area. I do think the area needs to ensure that it has a more coherent economic development strategy. It needs to make sure that it's raising its profile more outside of North East Lincolnshire to attract people in. I think we need to try and make the area look more attractive and market the area better to ensure that we are able to attract business and industry in.
You've been advocating changes to the planning process in North East Lincolnshire.
Yes.
How would you change them and why?
Well, the problem at the moment is we don't have a current up-to-date local plan in North East Lincolnshire because the current administration has been dragging its feet in terms of getting that new local plan together, and we can't identify a 5-year supply of housing land. That means that we've had a large number of speculative planning applications put in for the southern and western arcs of North East Lincolnshire on greenfield sites and strategic gap sites. where really we should be trying to preserve those areas, and we should be trying to redevelop the town centre and put housing on brownfield sites instead. But until we get our local plan sorted out and in place, it's very difficult to direct housing development to where we want it. We do need more housing in North East Lincolnshire, there's no doubt about that. All parties have agreed if we're going to take advantage of the industrial developments that are coming along, but at the same time it needs to be in the right place. We don't want to allow greenfield sites turning into building sites.
But is that not also a subject of consensus between all parties, the building on brownfield sites rather than greenfield sites? That's not something that anybody would disagree with, is it?
Well, no, that's right, but unfortunately, because the Labour administration has been so slow in getting a local plan process moving, we're in a very difficult position from a planning viewpoint to be able to direct housing to where we want it.
So the difference between you and the Labour administration is you'd be faster.
We would. I mean, we would have got the process moving much more quickly.
Okay. It's become more expensive to live in North East Lincolnshire recently. The council is charging us more for living here.
Yes, the council tax went up 1.9% in May.
This
yes.
May.
Yes.
Could that have been prevented, or is that an inevitability that we couldn't have avoided?
Well, no, the Conservatives were in favour of keeping the council tax at its previous level, and indeed there was £600,000 worth of government grant available to the council if it had capped its council tax, but the Labour administration turned down the option.
Well, because by turning down that option of £600,000, they were able to raise more money for the revenues of the council by raising the council tax, presumably.
Well, yes, but but in order to raise an additional £600,000 of income, which is what they did, they had to put their hands in the pockets and take out £1.2 million from people's pockets, which certainly wasn't good value for money and shouldn't have been done.
How would you have avoided a raise in council tax, though, when everything possible to cut council costs has been done? There are an awful lot of redundancies, a great deal of efficiency in the headquarters, as it were, in the central bureaucracy, various services closing down. What more could you have done to keep the spending of the council reduced as much as possible?
Well, there were quite a number of things we would have done. I mean, for example, another controversial item at the time was the spending of £8 million on a new swimming pool at Cromwell Road in Grimsby. We were not in favour of that. We were in favour of refurbishing the swimming pool at on Scartho Road, the current swimming pool. Money could have been saved there. And we identified a number of other schemes where money could have been saved and avoiding the necessity of a council tax increase.
Moving from the idea of local taxation, we move on to the sort of the national scene. Last week you had your party's
yes.
national conference. Your leader, the Prime Minister David Cameron, gave a speech in which he declared various tax cuts for the highest rate taxpayers and for the lowest rate taxpayers. They seem slightly disingenuous promises. Firstly, the lowest rate taxpayers, if you're earning the minimum wage, then you'll be taken completely out of tax. Many people earning the minimum wage per hour aren't paying tax anyway because they're not working full time. So that's a vast category, that demographic, which sounds as if it's getting a present, but it's not really getting anything, is it?
Well, of course, the current government has taken a lot of people out of tax anyway by increasing personal allowances, the amount you can earn before you pay tax, to £10,000, which is a move in the right direction. I'm very much in favour of increasing personal allowances so people at the bottom end of the income scale are taken out of tax altogether. But I think there's also a big group of people, middle earners as well, who at the moment seem to be the ones who are paying the largest amount of tax. And I think by increasing personal allowances, that helps to ease the burden on those people as well.
There's also, that's a reduction in tax there, but he's also, of course, promising to continue, or he and his friend George Osborne, to continue paying down the deficit,
yes.
if not the debt, which is still rising. But at the same time, promising to have no spending cuts on things like the NHS. How do you pay back a debt without increasing the revenue that you have in from taxation and without cutting the services produced by national government?
Well, of course, the other part of that equation is the improvement in the economy and the extra tax that is brought in because the economy is prospering, and undoubtedly the economy is now moving in the right direction. We've got the lowest level of unemployment now since 2008.
This is a very Keynesian analysis, isn't it? That as the economy expands and the revenue for the government expands, if that's true, then shouldn't the theory have been not austerity, but spending more money spending to expand the economy from a supply side perspective?
Well, no, because you've got to make sure that the economy is built on firm foundations in the first place, and by trying to drive down the deficit, the government has been improving the confidence in and keeping debt down, keeping interest rates down, which is necessary, and the confidence is being built in the economy. We can see this by the number of new jobs that are being created, particularly in the private sector, and it's a matter of trying to rebalance the public sector and the private sector and ensure that less money is being spent in the public sector, so taxation and borrowing can be kept down and the private sector can flourish.
A couple of names for you that have dominated Conservative politics recently. Douglas Carswell, Mark Reckless, defectors, members of Parliament defecting to UKIP. Is there a possibility of that happening in North East Lincolnshire on a smaller scale, that Conservative supporters here will, and prominent Conservative supporters here, will prefer the UKIP programme?
Well, I'm not aware of anybody prominent locally who's about to defect to UKIP, and I hope that won't happen. I think what people have to recognise is that I can understand why people are concerned about things like immigration and Europe. I have my concerns about those as well. But the only way we're going to get a referendum in future about our future role within Europe is to have a Conservative government after the next election. Well, and the danger of people who traditionally voted Conservative moving over to UKIP is that it splits the centre-right vote and lets Labour in by the back door, and Labour will not be having a referendum.
Yes, there's been a lot of talk of going to bed with Nigel Farage and waking up with Ed Miliband.
Yes.
An extremely awkward breakfast, one would imagine.
Absolutely.
If that referendum were to come in 2017, which way would you vote, in or out of Europe?
Well, I think with the present settlement we have with Europe, I would be voting to come out of Europe.
Right.
But I'd be interested to see what renegotiation we can have with Europe, and if we can change the terms of our arrangement within the European community, I could be potentially persuaded to vote to stay in. But at the moment, I'm very sceptical about Europe.
Well, those who share your scepticism about Europe will perhaps notice that there's not particularly a difference in any other programme between the Conservatives and UKIP in terms of policy, other than whether or not we have a referendum or whether or not we come straight out. And a lot of people in Grimsby are going to be tempted just to vote for UKIP to come straight out and then have a quasi-libertarian nationalist government here. Is that not a risk to Conservative politics in your territory?
Well, it is, of course, and the problem is there's no way that UKIP can form the next government.
Within North East Lincolnshire, it could form the next administration.
I think again that's a real danger, because what the Conservative group on the council is showing is that we've got the skills and experience, and we're raising the issues and dealing with the issues within North East Lincolnshire, whereas we're hearing virtually nothing from UKIP on the council. We're the ones who are raising issues around the Peaks Parkway, the local plan, improving democracy within the council.
I'll have to stop your list of achievements there. Councillor Jackson, very many thanks for coming on. Must stop there. That's all we have time for now. I regret next week I'll have another hot topic for you. Hope you'll join me then, but until then, goodbye.